I managed to get this menu done, and it's controlled by something called a game manager. Stick around to find out exactly what it is. Hey guys, Adam here from Pixel Mystique. In the previous devlog, I shared my experience using Plural Sight. It's a platform where I start to learn more intermediate programming in Unity. From there, I follow a series of courses named Swords and Shovels, and I started with the Character Stats course. So to continue forward, I'm going to share my experience on the next topic, or rather the next course, which is called Game Manager, Loaders, and the Game Loop. A mouthful, I know. By the way, if you're new to this channel, do consider subscribing to get game dev tips, tutorials, and inspiration. So what I learned from the course is how to build a centralized game manager, managing a scene and how to load and unload it, using game state to track and control game behavior, and then lastly, how to properly restart and shut down a game. So like everyone else, I was wondering what the heck is a game manager? So in general, game manager would function as a central location for data. So for example, you can have a shared location of where the player health is, whether or not the player is controllable, what level the player is on. It also determines who can change what, and it informs other systems of particular changes. This is great because previously I mentioned that my code is all over the place, and whenever I had to change one thing, I have to also update multiple other systems and scripts on multiple other objects everywhere else, which gets very messy very quickly. Having a game manager will help me centralize my systems and will make things way more efficient and cleaner so that everything becomes more modular and I can add on other functionalities and systems a lot easier. Okay, so to start off, I went into Unity and created a boot scene. Basically, this boot scene is the first scene to load when the game is executed, and it's acting as a container scene for the game manager. So it's literally an empty scene, and here's a game manager object, and it has a game manager script attached to it. Next, I also created another scene where it's called the main scene. So just gonna open it up right now. So the main scene is a destination scene, or in other words, it's the first scene right after you click start. It's just an empty scene for now. It's a sample scene, and it's just got the default settings of Unity with the skybox, and I put a simple white plane here just as an indication, and there's a directional light and a camera. That's it. From that as well, I've also added both these scenes as part of what to be loaded in Unity. So under build settings, I've added both the boot and the main scene, and this will tell Unity that these are the two scenes that will be loaded via script. From there, I also created what's called a UI manager. It's basically a prefab that's attached in the game manager. So when you look at game manager right here, we have the UI manager, and if I were to drag this to the scene, just to show you guys how it looks like, it's basically a prefab that contains elements for a lot of the UI that I have used for this game so far. But it doesn't include the HUD, the HUD UI, which includes the player's information like health, mana, and all that. For now, it's more about the menus that we have in the game. So when you look closer into the UI manager prefab, it has three main things. One, it's a camera. And for now, I'm just following the course and it says dummy camera. Next, it has another prefab, which is a main menu. The main menu itself is a UI kind of like container. It has a background image, which right now I'm using the what the heck's concept art. It also has a text at the bottom that says press space to start. For the pause menu, it's hidden by default because it should only appear when you click escape. So if I unhide it, just to show you, it's actually a huge black rectangular UI element. It has other UI elements underneath, namely the body and the header. So the body of the menu would have the 3 buttons, quit, restart, resume. And of course, underneath them, I separated the graphical element and the actual text element. There's also the header, as I mentioned before, and this is the title with the text separated again. I like to keep it separated because it is much more modular and organized, and later on when I want to move things around and change things, it's much easier. Within the UI Manager itself, I've also created a script, and the UI Manager script, which is right here, is meant to reference the various other elements that we have for now, which is there's a reference for main menu, pause menu, and dummy camera. It's also meant to communicate with the game manager so that it's aware of certain things, and it's also telling the game manager of certain statuses and certain actions that's been taken within the UI space. On the main menu prefab, there's a few things that's attached to it as well. There's a few animations for fading in, fading out, and the start text, which is down here. There's some sort of blinking kind of effect that I animated. There's also a main menu script to act as a trigger point and control the different animations and knowing how and when to stop them. So the next step is to actually have a simple state machine. And basically a state machine, it's a way to run certain rules, such as enabling and disabling various systems during certain states of a game. So in the next diagram, you'll see this example. Maybe there's a game where there's 3 main states, where there's a game running state, where the player actually plays the game and enjoys the gameplay loop. And then there's also a game pause state, where the player can stop everything and all the systems will not run and will be presented with a menu. And then there's also a game over state, which is when the player dies or loses the game. You'll have different rules happening at different states, and for example, you don't want enemies to move when you are in pause state, and for game over means you probably want to either throw a retry screen or go straight to the main menu. For this sample project, in this course, there are 3 main states for now, which is the first one, the pre-game state. This is the state where the player character and controllers should not be available to the player, because this state is the state where the main menu sits, and it's when the player has not chosen a particular game mode yet. And then from there, there's the obvious playing state. This is when the player can move, enemies can attack, and basically the player can experience the design game loop intended for the player. And then lastly, there is a pause state. This is a intermediate state where it exists during the playing state, but it stops all the other systems and it freezes everything so that it allows the player to literally pause the game. Same here, during this state, it will be unlikely that the player can control the main characters, and enemies should not be able to damage the player, and so on and so forth. And then there's just a few finishing touches that I need to do, which is mostly revolving around the pause state. So I need to make sure that the pause state allows players to enter it via the escape key. So bind it to escape, and then display a menu when it's paused. So in the menu itself, you can exit the pause state by clicking the resume button on the UI. During the pause state itself, you'll need to be able to pause an entire game simulation so that everything freezes and the player will not get hurt by enemies and all the other rules will stop. We don't leave the UI manager here in this scene. What happens instead is that I'm going to remove this since it's a prefab and it's already being referenced in the game manager. The concept here is that whenever we play the boot scene, it will load the game and also the UI manager. As you can see right here, it's cloned the UI manager and it's referencing it from the prefab in our folder. When I start interacting with this UI, I'm showing you a split view here so that you can see the hierarchy in Unity. It unloads the previous scene and it loads the main scene, which is where we're in right now. There's a little issue right now where the UI for the press start text keeps on blinking. I'll have a look at that later on. Basically right now that's not a main concern because the priority is more towards restructuring the core systems and making sure all the code is nice and clean. So I'll deal with that later. So for now, as you can see here, the main scene has been loaded. And when we click escape, it will then unhide and load the pause menu. And I can click resume and it starts the gameplay loop again. And when I press escape again, it pauses again, the gameplay simulation. And if I click restart, as you can see on the side here, it removes the main scene and we're back to the boot scene. So loading the scene and then unloading the scene when it's not needed. So imagine the main scene being replaced by actual levels. Level 1, level 2, level 3. Whenever I select a level, for example, it will then load that level. And then whenever we move to level 2, level 3, it will then unload the previous level and then just load the level 2 or level 3 as when the game needs it. This makes things more efficient and clean. It makes sure that there are not multiple scenes running unnecessarily at the same time. And from there, it really, hopefully, reduces the amount of errors and bugs that we get. Okay, with that out of the way, in the next devlog, I'll be working on the item loot system, and you don't want to miss that one. If you enjoyed this devlog, hit that like button and consider subscribing so you won't miss my next upload. Thanks for watching. Have a nice day. Special thanks to my Patreon supporters. It is due to their generosity that I'm able to continue to develop this game and make more videos for this channel.